We are now turning our kaleidoscope a little bit, because our next speaker is from the social sciences, and the notion of a just energy transition in relation to the climate crisis is high on her agenda. Joyeeta Gupta is Distinguished Professor of Climate Justice, Sustainability and Global Justice at the University of Amsterdam. She is also Professor of Environment and Development in the Global South and holds a water professorship at IHE, Delft's Institute for Water Education. Now, Dr. Gupta, you were the lead author of the Nobel Peace Prize winning report on climate change of the IPCC back in 2007. But you've also been awarded your own Nobel Prize, which is the Spinoza Prize, the highest distinction in Dutch science, which was back in 2023. Now, Professor Gupta is ready to challenge us on the notion of security. Energy security is on everybody's agenda, but what about climate security? It's the time to leave the podium to you.
Thank you very much.
And of course, you're going to have a warm applause at the start as well.
It's a privilege to be here to speak to you. Good morning, everybody. So I'm going to take you through a small but fast tour of my work, and I'm going to focus first on the work of the Earth Commission, which I was also the co-chair of. Now, in the Earth Commission, we looked at safe boundaries, and the safe boundaries are shown here in the outer circle, red and green. These are the safe boundaries beyond which the systems become irreversible, whether it is the biospheric system or water system or climate change. They become irreversible and the change becomes drastic. The question that we asked is, are safe boundaries just? And we concluded, for example, with respect to climate change, that 1.5 is not a just target. It should be more like 1 degree, and even that was a concession. And similarly, we did this exercise for other domains, and our just boundaries are shown in blue. Now, we were just talking about 2 degrees and 1.5, and I'm going further and saying we need 1 degree, because already at 1 degree, the damage to people on Earth is significant. More than 1% of the global population will suffer, and it will keep increasing into the future. So the question is, from whose perspective are we looking at these issues? Then, we have been discussing the fact that if you add up all the NDCs, you might land up at 2.7 degrees centigrade, or maybe more if some of the NDCs are actually not implemented. I would like to show you one slide that we have been working on in an ERC project, where we are asking, what is the lifetime of existing coal plants, coal mines? The little white balls are all coal mines worldwide, and if they are white in color, they have a very short lifetime, another 4 or 5 years, 10 years perhaps. But if they are dark red, they have just been opened and they have a long lifetime ahead. And this basically means that the postponement of the climate objective to 2015, even though we knew about it in 1990, allowed the rich countries to use their fossil fuels, and there's very little space left now for the developing countries to use their fossil fuels. And because there was very little space, therefore, instead of actually allocating that space in an equitable manner, we moved to the story of everyone does what they can. Okay. In my previous slide, I forgot to tell you that we are outside most of the boundaries. The only boundary we have not yet crossed is the aerosol boundary at the global level, but the aerosol boundary has also been crossed at the local level in many parts of the world. So we have safe and just boundaries. The just boundaries tend to be more stringent than the safe boundaries. We are outside the boundaries. Let's look at whether we can meet the needs of basic needs of people within these boundaries. Now, we're outside the boundaries, so clearly, if you meet the basic needs, you'll go further out. In our little thought exercise, we looked at 2018, and we said, what happens if we try to meet the basic needs of people to food, water, energy, and infrastructure, a small house the size of a parking lot, and we calculated that in terms of CO2 emissions. So this is taking the work of Rawat a step further, because the basic needs are calculated in the same units as the boundaries to calculate how much space there is left. And our initial results showed that, before I go ahead, this figure starts at 90%, so 0 to 90% is outside. Our initial results showed that the existing impact on the domains is shown in blue, but if you met the minimum needs of people worldwide by a little amount, that's a dignified life, then you have an additional impact shown in orange. And if you were to help them escape from poverty, you would have another larger impact. And the message I take back from me is, if we are to meet minimum needs within the whole climate storyline, we have to try and meet them through renewables or something else, but not fossil fuel, which of course is a big challenge. All right, so I think that despite what's happening on the geopolitical stage, it is climate security that is much, much more serious than energy security, war, or anything else, because it is happening and it will happen. Because it affects energy security through destroying infrastructure, because it drives all other environmental problems, whether it's biodiversity loss, whether it's changing the water patterns, whether it is ocean acidification and land degradation. Because it affects human health, directly and indirectly through food, water, and changing climates. And because it can also exacerbate conflict, and we are seeing that people are fighting over scarce resources nowadays. So all the others are important. War is important, energy security is important, but the climate security must be first up. To go to the next step on the fossil fuel storyline, essentially, the fossil fuel empire is worth between 16 and 295 trillion US dollars, and it pervades rich and poor households. It is the most profitable investment today because it's a political monopoly, and therefore most people want to invest in it, like our pension funds. Divestment doesn't really help because it pushes the ownership of those fossil fuels to somebody else. I see fossil fuel companies are buying up universities in different parts of the world. They're buying up actors, they're buying up governments, and they continuously manipulate the process through denial, casting doubt, questioning science, lobbying, revolving door. Nowadays, through delay, they say they are necessary, they do greenwashing, they say that technologies will solve the problem, and they blame the consumer. So my storyline is we all have to focus on leaving fossil fuel underground. And we have to redirect the fossil fuel subsidies, redirect green subsidies from rich people to the poorer people in the neighborhoods. We have to get government procurement. We have to replace the market mechanisms with public education and mobilizing the domestic public. We need to redirect sovereign debt to finance LFFU in developing countries, crack down on tax evasion and avoidance to finance public goods. We have to make the military expenditure that Europe is going to do right now green. There is no reason for it not to be using renewable energy or some other sort of energy which is not fossil fuel. And of course, all companies should look at Scope 1, Scope 2, Scope 3 emissions. And so we need to turn tragedy into opportunity. The tragedy is that some governments say, my emissions don't matter, perhaps Norway, perhaps the Netherlands. I think every emission matters. Some people say, I'm spending my money well, but ignore income sources. I think that's probably the case in Norway. Amsterdam, for example, says it's a donut economy, but it earns its money through the port of Amsterdam, which is oil and gas, and has shares in Schiphol. Some people say my emissions are so large, I can't do anything, but they have the critical mass for change, and they need to do that. And the question is, why should I take action? Well, we all have to take action, and all of us have to do Scope 1, Scope 2, Scope 3. In addition to what the previous speaker said about developing technology, I'd like to leave a message to you, all of you. You're not just a scientist sitting over here. You have to go home and speak to people. You have to mobilize people for change. If you do not mobilize people, people will vote for the wrong governments, and you will get governments that don't believe in climate science. So my hope to you is not only that you are a technocrat, but that you are somebody who is going to take your science outside. Many thanks.